Hitting the recording. Hey guys, I'm here with Diem Mooney. Please, Diem. My name is Nakar Grattgliano. I am the host of Shogun Valley. Please, Diem, introduce yourself to the world and to the audience.
Sure. Yes, my name is Diem Mooney. I'm an industrial organizational psychologist um, that specializes in human-computer interaction. Um, not sure exactly how much detail you want to get into. I currently live in Maryland, United States. Um, from Montgomery, Alabama, originally. 27 years old.
Just like me, Diem. I just turned 27 today. That's
Oh,
my
happy
birthday.
birthday!
Yep.
Happy birthday! I just turned 27 a few weeks ago.
Oh, when was that?
August 30th.
Oh, August 30th. Okay, happy birthday to
Mm,
both of us.
Thank you.
So, DM, I went a little bit through your curriculum, kind of what I could find online about you. And
Okay.
so you are a behavioral scientist, and
Yes.
you take care of the part that regards the human machine interaction. I'd be
Yes.
curious if you just expand a little bit on that. What is it?
Sure.
Why is it important these moments, and what is this about for just please for normal people like
Sure. Of course. Of course. So yes, I do specialize in human and computer interaction. Basically, I go into organizations a lot of times and evaluate how usable or user friendly technology is for employees to be able to use to do their jobs. So, for example, if a secretary has to put in data on the computer for their role, I look at how how easy the software is for her to do her job. Um, so that's a lot of times, and I also do it for consumers. So if you're using an app or website to make a purchase, I evaluate how easy or user friendly it is for the consumer, the end user, to be able to do what they're trying to do to achieve their goals essentially with technology. Yeah, so that's the human computer interaction part. I do also do process evaluation and service design for organizations. So basically evaluating the experience that a candidate or a job seeker has when they go through a job interview from start to finish, when they first walk through the door to, when they're accepting an offer, or, different processes that we kind of don't even think about exist, but that if they were bad experiences, we would definitely notice.
so you kind of go through the hiring process and you understand how those system works
Hmm.
and what is the difference when you're hiring someone face to face and when you're hiring him online? What is
Sure.
the like the things you, if I come there, like someone comes there face to face, what
Hmm.
would you look at? And when
Sure.
someone is doing the same thing online, like really what changes?
Sure. So face to face, when you're thinking about the hiring process or the onboarding process, it actually starts technically online for everyone these days, because when the job seeker first interacts with the company, it's usually from an online application. So you have to think about from that very moment when they are first introduced to the job title, how are they introduced to it? Is it, on a job board? Is it on your company's website? Is it on social media? How does your company look to them as far as branding? Do you seem like you're a good company, a competent company with a job description that makes sense, or does it seem like you're kind of all over the place? That's the first initial contact that you have with, whether it's online or in person. Then you have to think about the follow communication. So after they apply online, what does the email look like that you're sending? Does it seem generic? Does it seem like it doesn't make much sense? Does it seem like you don't really care about them? That's the second time you're talking with them. And then now going into the differences here for the actual interviews. So when you're in person, you have to think about, how far are you making the candidate park? Because for some places, like maybe a hospital, parking can be limited. So if you make the candidate park, 3 miles away, and they have to walk with a suitcase and, in a business suit, they may be sweaty and uncomfortable by the time they actually get to your interview. Versus, say, if you have parking only for job seekers, so they're right in the front and they don't have to, look around and try to pay for parking. Those are type of things that you have to think about in your process when you're considering how a candidate perceives your company and how much you care about them. Going into now, how easy is it to find the office? Did you give them clear instructions in their email of how to get to the office or who to speak to? Did you make sure that someone was there to wait for them, while they're waiting, so that way they know what to do next? Did you offer them water? Did you give them a rundown of what was going to happen? You know what I'm saying? Those are all things that you have to consider when you're in person, because every moment that candidate is engaging with your company, it's the moment that they're collecting data on you. They're interviewing you. The candidate is interviewing you, saying, you know what, they didn't care about me. They made me walk 3 miles. They didn't have a parking spot. I had to pay $10 for parking, and I'm already don't have money. And no one was there to show me where to go, and I was lost. So I was 15 minutes late. And no one offered me water, and I get done walking 3 miles, and no one, all those things kind of pile up to where the candidate's like, this is a bad company. This company doesn't care about their employees. I'm not going to work here. Even if that's top talent, that person could have been so qualified for your role. Those are things you think about when you're in person. When you're online, think about the tools you're using. Again, are they able to log into the system and use Zoom or use whatever WebEx or Google Hangouts, so they know how to use it? Have you given them enough instructions to help them to be able to access the links, or to be able to turn the microphones on? And did you give them instruction on what to wear, how to speak in the mic? You know what I'm saying? If not, then essentially you're making a bad experience for your company, because the candidate is confused about what to do, even though they're qualified for the job you're hiring for.
So I have this new microphone. It's very good, but as you can hear, I don't know if you can hear it, but I have this one, and I can hear
Mm-hmm.
even when I'm breathing, breathing
Mm-hmm.
like that. It's really powerful. I have to get used. You're the first one who's actually enjoying the interview with this microphone,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm really curious what the result will be. Um, so that is from the part of the company. Just the company has to make sure when interviewing a candidate through face to face that it just gives the best service
Mm-hmm.
to somehow incorporate the best talents, and that's usually what companies do. They look for the
Mm-hmm.
best talent. They try to make them work, of course, inside the company, and so you want to have that perception that you're a cost company that cares, that
Yep.
values your employees. And of course, the first impression is not everything, but it matters, especially when it's
It matters a
face to
lot.
face.
Mm-hmm.
Versus when you are online, there is the same thing. If you are the employer, you have to just give them a chance to just come out there and look for a job.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
what happens from the standpoint of view of the job seeker? What does he have to do in terms of curriculum of preparing for an interview? What are so many
Sure.
mistakes that people make, or so many things that people give for granted that maybe you have noticed during your career?
Sure, sure. So on the opposite side, I do a lot of job seeker career counseling and career transitioning coaching. I would say not being prepared and not knowing how to be prepared. So being prepared is very broad. How does someone prepare for something that they're not really prepared for? And I would say not knowing the job that you applied for, and that means not just simply saying this is the job title I applied for, but knowing what the job title means to that company, because job titles can be the same in one company, same title, but it could mean a very different thing. And you want to make sure you do your research on that company's culture, maybe talk to someone in that role, and make sure you fully understand how that job title looks, and how your experiences match up with what they're looking for. So essentially, if you're trying to be a chef, well, a chef for a 5-star restaurant isn't the same thing as a chef maybe for a 2-star restaurant, right? So when you go in there and you're presenting yourself, you want to make sure that you fully understand exactly what they're looking for and what that company defines as a chef, and make sure that you align with it. And then think about, before you do the interview, think about times in which you met those requirements, and then talk situationally. You don't want to just go into an interview and just be like yes, no, and kind of keep short responses. You want to be able to tell a story into which like you actually did those things from start to finish. So you describe, what you were doing basically. So like, what was your duty in that time? What was your job title? Then why you were doing it, like, well, why were you responsible for it? Why was that your role? How you did it. So specifically go, well, as a chef, I was head chef, and I did it because, I was under the direction of this person. And how I did it was I started opening the shop at 5 a.m. and I did X, Y, and Z. And then finally saying, what were the results? So then you talk about, well, what happened? So like from doing that, I increased sales by this, and the restaurant was always full by this time, and reservations were increased by this. If you can't do that though, if you don't fully understand what that role is looking for, what that role means to that company.
Okay, so every company, it's let's say it's different, and so
Hmm.
you just whoever it's doing a work application should be like really specific. Should just go in, just
Hmm.
really study the company, and understand that whatever you have done, whatever your experience, whatever your qualification, whatever degree you may hold, it
Hmm.
has in the mind of whoever's hiring you rather different value.
Yes, exactly.
Um, Now I would like to enter a little bit into what psychological behavior is. You know what it is like for people, because I see a bunch of I'm just looking here, scrolling through, and I can
Hmm.
see it just covers a bunch of topic from psychology, human memory, sociology,
Hmm.
and social psychology.
Sure.
What is it you
Yeah.
guys do? Because what basically what you're doing, it's just unlocking the mind, entering
Hmm.
in the psychic of person. I was always
Sure.
fascinated by psychology.
Sure.
As far from my
So,
understanding, I know, I read a bit of Jung, a little bit of Freud. I don't know how,
mhm,
how you tap into that. And
sure.
what was the driving force? Why you got into psychology, social psychology?
Mhm.
What was your motivation, man?
Okay. So for the first question regarding like technically, what do psychologists do and like what do we focus on? The easiest way of explaining what a psychologist is that we are human experience practitioners, and the fact that we a lot of times do research to better understand the behaviors, the motivations, the attitudes, cognitions of humans. So basically, during different developmental stages. So if you do children, if you do pediatrics, or if you do adults, geriatrics, if you're looking at organization, if you're looking at abuse and trauma, regardless of the setting you're looking in, as psychologists try to understand the human's experience when interacting with certain stimulus or like different external factors, different phenomenon. So basically, when something happens, very specific trigger happens, how do they react to it? How do you feel about it? And then use that to predict future behavior and future motivations and future attitudes. So that way we can create or establish interventions that improve the experience. So for me specifically as an IO psychologist, I study the experiences of employees and job seekers. So I really evaluate how they behave, what they're motivated by, their attitude, certain things that are happening around them, and say this is how majority of people will respond in a situation. That way I can help with developing policies and procedures that improve the experiences of those people. That's what psychologists do. We really want to help the population that we choose, and that this is our focus. This is who we really want to help, and we do that through scientific methods of like evaluating behavioral science. So specifically, I got into this field. I was introduced to the field of psychology in general at a young age because I'm autistic. So I've always had a therapist and a psychologist growing up for behavioral management, and a behavior analyst to help me cope with social interactions and all that good stuff. So as I was always intrigued by it, I was always aware of the field,
I just
and
want to tap it just a moment.
sure,
Wow, you're really autistic. What are some of the challenges you face as an autistic?
sure.
What are the challenges you face as an autistic? Obstacles and what
Mhm.
you go through, man?
Sure. So for me, I mean, it is autism is a spectrum. Everyone kind of deals with it a little bit differently. But for me, I deal with sensory issues, so I have very limited in my capacity. So it's like auditory, so noises. I'm very sensitive to them. I can be very distracted by the slightest of sounds, so much so that it's hard for me to work in environments that have any kind of noise. Like I couldn't sit in a work office. I mean, in an office space because there's the doors opening, there's people walking by, there's chatter, there's tapping of keyboards, all of that kind of stuff. It makes it near impossible for me to focus. Also touch, I can't engage with like handshaking or pats on the back or any kind of thing like that because it makes me very anxious. So again, working in an environment with other people can be very challenging for me because I am not able to necessarily engage in a lot of those things that people consider to be normal. Another thing would be my ability to interact socially. um, I don't always understand the nuances of conversations, like emotional, like tones and changes in voices. And if someone feels something, I don't necessarily always know why, because I'm looking very objectively at it and not necessarily considering some of the emotional pieces. So ironically enough, with me not being able to do that naturally, I've spent my whole life trying to learn it theoretically, like with books and with school. And that's actually, again, why I got into psychology, where I was forced into learn. Like I have to say, okay, if someone behaves this way because this happened to them, I have to then understand why are they doing that? For most people, like naturally going, oh, it's because of this. But for me, it wasn't obvious. I had to actually study up on it and learn about it. And then I created frameworks around being a particular behavior. And that's what psychologists do. That's, again, that's our core. We want to make sure that we understand the behaviors, motivations, attitudes of people, measure it, and then be able to predict so that we can create policies for change.
Wow, wow, wow. So that actually started from you having some sort of you had some condition,
Like the limitation
some
myself. Yeah.
limitation, and like you really wanted to dig into that, and you
Hmm.
really wanted somehow to, I believe, to maybe connect with other people and understand what
Hmm.
other people
Yes.
were feeling, even is that
Hmm.
at a theoretical level,
Hmm.
and just develop
Turn it into
your,
a career.
yeah, and then that eventually became your career.
Yep.
Wow, 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 interesting. Interesting, interesting, really cool. And what happens with autism? Is there some signs? Because you look like, man, you look perfectly normal. Like
Sure.
it just, unless how you tell. Like how can people tell? When did you
Sure.
find out? Because that's not really obvious.
Sure.
Um,
Sure. Sure. So again, it is a spectrum. So how it displays in people, it differs. Also, there are some things to consider with me specifically would be that I did go through therapy and behavior modification for 27 years of my life. Well, not 27, like 24, basically. Very young age where they teach you how to mimic behaviors, how to speak in a certain tone so that way you come off with certain emotions. So I'm able to emulate and assimilate very well, especially,
well,
but only in certain situations. So an interview like this with you is very easy for me because I've already done it so many times. I have now at this point been interviewed like 108 times. So I've done it so many times now, repetitive. I know how to speak. I know how to gesture. I know how to, like, my tone, keep my tone in a way that's pleasant, but also, there's emotion, So because I've done it so many times, it's like clockwork for me. However, had this been, something that was like in a party setting or something where people who I don't know or I wasn't prepared to know what we're talking about, I would be completely different. Usually displays in like being nonverbal. So nonverbal is a little bit different than just simply being quiet. Um, I can go long periods of time without saying anything to anyone, and a lot of times I get agitated very quickly. I jump or like can be kind of aggressive towards physical contact. That it was something that even if you're standing right in front of me and you're saying shaking hand, if you were to like initiate it too much, I would be slightly agitated by that. I wear headphones a lot because again for sensory issues, I have always canceling headphones pretty much if I go out you know things like that. I can be like even now technically I can be fidgety from having to sit and constantly talk too long. Um days when I have more social, like today I actually have quite a bit of like back-to-back meetings, and it can cause me to get like burnt out by talking and being socializing, because generally natural setting I stay to myself and I don't really say much to anyone. I kind of just do my job and stay behind the scenes. um
wow, 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 wow. So you're really comfortable with scenarios you have already seen, you have already
yes.
lived.
Hmm.
So, but however, like if you were to go like to a party where you know everybody and you have already been to
Hmm.
a few, you'd feel
Hmm.
more comfortable that it's just invited by some strangers or.
No, it wouldn't have it wouldn't matter because of like the noise, the unpredictability of the conversations. Like this, with talking with you, I already know there's a scope. It's a box of conversation. When I do interviews, there are certain topics that everyone wants to talk about with me. So much so that I've already done it. At a party, they could talk about the weather. They could talk about how my day went. They could talk about things that are very abstract, things that I
Wow,
can't
wow,
always
wow.
conceptualize. That's the part that gets me. Because right now with interviews, you're asking me questions about me, so I know it. I'm talking about myself, but if you ask me how my day was, well, like what part of my day, what what specifically you want to know? You're talking about emotions, you're talking about my task. You see, it's very very broad. It's hard for me to figure out how to respond, and I get very anxious.
Wow, 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 wow. That's really. Wow, that's incredible. And you had like ever had like some people that were maybe shocked by some of your agitation that didn't really understand? Because like
Yeah.
I would imagine like someone who doesn't know, unless you
Mhm.
just say it like you did with me, like I had these other conditions. Someone might be like, "Well, what's happened with him?" And
Yeah, yeah.
that's that may feel bad because you have this condition, this yeah.
Mhm. Well, I suppose maybe when I was younger, but now I am more upfront with it. I think it's just it's in my best interest and the person I'm speaking with to just simply know. So if I'm engaging with someone, generally speaking, I am just upfront about it. So that way they're, like they understand and that won't be a barrier. I found that if I don't simply be upfront, even my clients, say at work, my clients always know because I want them to understand, when they're engaging with me, these are some limitations I have so that way we can go ahead and overcome them and continue on with the project. So I've just found it's most productive is just to say something you know
Okay, so you just like really upfront. You just
hmm
yeah. And once they know, yeah, it's pretty cool. I
yep,
get it.
and yeah, exactly.
Yeah, fantastic. So have you ever helped someone like any of your clients who have the same condition, like or something like that? Like,
Sure. Well, to my knowledge, I haven't worked with anyone who is autistic or not, at least to the point in which it impaired their like ability to work with me. So I can't say I have not worked with anyone autism because technically I could have, I just didn't know, but not to my knowledge.
all right, okay, I get it. So now I have some more interesting question. Like,
Okay.
um, wait a minute. So you talk about hybrid OD and UX strategy. What is that all
Yes.
about? I've seen that in your
Sure.
curriculum. What is that?
Sure. Essentially, I work in both organizational development. So when I go into companies and help them with like employer branding, like I said, candidates experience, employee engagement, but I also work in user experience field, which is again where I'm talking more about the technology piece, where I'm focusing on the technology being used to, like to develop apps or websites and making sure that the end user, which could be a consumer, it could be an employee, it could be anyone, is interacting with it. So they're technically two separate fields, but I've merged them somewhat to be like a practitioner of both.
Wow. So you'd be consulting like some companies, some big companies, and you just
hmm
do this type of analysis
hmm
that regards these aspects. I understand.
Yes.
Um, I wanna because you are also a coach, and when it comes to behavioral scientists, it's a lot to do
hmm
with your emotion, with your mind, and actually how you face situations.
Yes.
So I want to talk about one skill that I believe it's important:
Okay.
adaptability and how you
Mhm.
face the challenges. From the
Sure.
prospect of point of view of a behavioral psychologist. Do you
hmm
have some tips regarding how to face challenges, how to face
Sure.
a situation, how to face anxieties, or what is it maybe you do when you find yourself confronting something that is unfamiliar, and
Sure.
what are some of the techniques you use to just push
Sure.
through something makes you
So
uncomfortable, for example?
yeah. I would say number one would be to reduce, anxieties and fears and to address challenges or even to avoid challenges before they come. It would be really, I always recommend to plan ahead as much as possible. So just have a more strategic problem solving mindset to consider roadblocks before they come. So if you jump into a situation completely blind, of course, you're going to have a higher level of anxiety. You're going to be more tense, you're going to be more unprepared. And even if it goes well, the entire time you were going through it, you were so uncertain with yourself that it was a lot less enjoyable, a lot more agitating, a lot more anxiety inducing, right? But simply by taking a moment before jumping to look around at the scene, to see how far the jump is, to see if there are resources like a parachute that could help you to maybe not hurt yourself so badly. Those type of things automatically make it so that way you're less fearful, you're less anxious about the situation. And it seems simple, but to be honest, you can use that in all aspects of your life, professionally and personally, to simply say, before I take this leap, let me truly evaluate the pros and cons of the leap, what resources do I have to help me to better succeed in my leap, how long is it going to take me to get down at the bottom, those type of questions, asking yourself that, truly asking yourself those questions, so that way when you actually take that jump, It's like, well, I've already thought about it. So if a challenge comes, I consider that challenge is going to come. Or if, something happens that I didn't expect to happen, may not be a challenge, then I already have a safety net. I already have my parachute ready, that makes life and going through and making certain decisions so much easier, and you're not as stressful, you're not as anxiety induced because you already thought about it before it happens, so you're able to address that challenge right then and there.
So I want to drop another question. Now, coronavirus came along. It was a shock
Hmm.
for everybody. Nobody was
Sure.
expecting.
Hmm.
But was it particularly maybe shocking for you because you have this, you are coexisting with autism? Was that
Sure.
kind of stressful? Like, because you couldn't maybe prepare? Like, no one could. It was, I believe me,
Sure.
look, it
Sure.
was stressful for me. It was stressful for anyone.
Of
But
course.
how
Mm,
first of all, how just as an individual, how did you go through that? What was going through your mind when there was this corona coming out? What was you thinking? Did it
sure.
affect your business somehow, or did your
Sure.
business
Sure.
go turn out pretty well?
Well, I would say with the whole pandemic, so from a personal standpoint, the thinking about the impact that it had with having to quarantine. Well, to be quite honest, it didn't impact my life very much because, again, I am not a very social person. I didn't do things that involve going out too much in to begin with. I do pretty much everything remotely. I say to myself, I have literally noise canceling headphones on to stay away from people. So I'm so suppose I didn't really feel the impact of the quarantine because of that was my lifestyle to begin with. 6 feet away from each other is what I always did. I don't want people touching me. um, so I didn't actually feel the impact of the quarantine, even with my job and everyone shifting to remote work and trying to shuffle around for tools. My company is already 100% remote in the first place. So I was already in place for remote calling. I already had a team that knew how to, operate remotely, clients that knew how to operate remotely. So there's no shift for me. In even that sense, as far as my business being hit, actually, again, the opposite. I think that my business significantly grew in this because I was so prepared already for remote work that I was able to take on projects immediately and start. And that's what they were looking for. Like, okay, well, we need to shift right now, and we need a professional who can get our team situated with remote work. So they hired me on to help them to implement remote policies because I'd already done it. Um, and because all of my services again are done without being in person, I was able to continue on with the project I already had. It didn't impact it whatsoever. So I would say that for me personally and professionally, the pandemic hasn't really changed my life whatsoever.
So you actually feel more comfortable interacting via the virtual form? Like it's
Yes.
comfortable for you? Like you feel
Yes.
more it is?
It's more control of the social environment. There's no one going to be touching me. There's no going to be sudden noises, or at least I can control it. I can just turn the volume down. Or again, it's more confined, because think about it. If you're in person and you're sitting, so say you're in a cubicle or whatever, and you're about to go to a meeting with your coworkers, there could be side conversations right before you get to the meeting. As soon as you walk out of the meeting, there's side conversations. There's like this, it's like this informal nature that
Yeah,
goes
yeah.
with being in person.
There's just so much going on, like so many
Exactly.
groups and people talking,
Mhm.
and you don't know
People
what's.
leaving out to go, yeah. But in remote settings, it's on my calendar. It's going to start at this time. So I call in at this time, and then I drop off at this time because the meeting ends at this time. Then that's the interaction. So in my mind, I'm able to really map out this is the objective of the call because it says it right there. This is the start of the time. This
Right,
is
right,
who's going to
right.
be hosting. And if it's recorded, it's recorded. So then I can listen to it. It's very, very controlled and easy for me to grasp. And that's why I prefer them.
Wow, 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 fantastic. That's really, 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 really great. I want to ask you like two other questions. Like,
Sure.
first of all, you're well, of course, you're obviously black, right? Of color.
Yes,
This we this
I
we
am.
can see. So, diversity on the workplace, and
Hmm.
if you have maybe something to say about that,
Sure.
and maybe how did you feel about what went on in America? I've seen so many protests. Obviously, you always end
Sure.
up
Sure.
seeing all of these videos of violence, etc. And
Sure.
so, what's the opinion from like you living in America? What you believe?
Mhm.
What's
Sure.
going on?
Well, I am completely for and an advocate for diversity in the workplace. I think that if you are practicing ethical hiring practices, then essentially you should be too. Anyone who is saying that I'm going to hire ethically and without discrimination, you are then saying that you're advocating for diversity, equity, and inclusion as well. However, a lot of times in practice, you don't see that. A lot of times people of color or people of certain genders, sexuality, they don't get a fair shot or opportunity, even though they're just qualified as someone who is not, who is a white person, or someone who's more like gender conforming, or someone who's, not, or straight, something like that. So I think that it is very important that we spend more time and focus more on diversifying our workforce. And actually, in my company, I'm actually just going to make a post about it, that I have intentionally and meaningfully ensured that my workforce is diverse in its race, gender, and then in neurotypical versus atypical. So people basically who are dyslexic, autistic, or have some kind of impairment, that they're able to also get an opportunity within the scope of their limitations. Of course, some people can't do certain things, but it doesn't mean they can't do anything. And there are plenty of roles that they can do, and make sure that I give them a shot and with things that they have strengths in. So I do that actually with my company.
Wow, that's really really great to just like you said, within the scope of what they can do, but just
Hmm.
give everyone a chance. Of course, not everyone can
Exactly.
do everything, but there's certain
Exactly.
tasks that they can actually do. Just like you can run a
Exactly.
company, you actually run
Hmm.
a company. You have an autistic limitation, but
Yeah.
that
So
doesn't
I can't do
prevent you.
everything, but there are some things that I can do, obviously, very well, and giving them the opportunities just as well as I have an opportunity to show what I can do very well.
Yeah, that's obvious. You just so many things you can do. You can do that, and
Yep.
the rest you can delegate, just like the rest of us, right?
Exactly. Yep.
For what you're not
Exactly.
good at, you'll hire someone, or you ask someone to do it for you.
Hmm.
And that is really what most people do. Like that's what
Yes,
all of
everyone
us
would do
do.
that. Yes,
So it's
exactly.
just yeah. And do you think like you think maybe your sensibility had something to do with maybe feeling a little different because you had this and that and then this other, maybe you became more.
Sure. Yeah, of course, my advocacy and my worldview came from being, a person of color, and being someone who, even my upbringing, being, poor and homeless, and, not having opportunities just handed to me. And of course, then with being autistic and having to deal with, the challenges with learning disabilities, stuff like that, of course, it made me more empathetic to others who may be facing certain things, because I always have learned basically over the years is that it's not that people, of color or, genders or whatever, they can't do something. It's that they're never given the opportunity to do something, you know, and that opportunity changes everything for them by just simply getting the opportunity to, get their foot in the door. And then it's like, well, I can do it, and I'm showing you I can do it. But like, how do you get a job if you need experience, but then like, well, I can't get experience because I can't get a job. That is essentially the trap that a lot of people and minority groups are in right now. And so I'm empathetic to say what I did was, for my own self, was I took the approach of doing it on my own. Like, I was an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna create my own companies. I'm gonna create my own projects. I'm gonna create my own work, my own, businesses. But that's not everyone. Everyone's not an entrepreneur. Not everyone wants to be one. So what about those who can't make their opportunities? They still
Yeah,
need to get one.
I was reading something on that, and there's really like a very small percentage. I don't know if it's true, but I was reading some article, and it's like really, I think it's like 4% or 1 out of 10 who has some sort of entrepreneurial. Many
Hmm.
people have like to really learn it, like, but
Hmm.
naturals are like really very little. So it's like you say, it's not for
Exactly.
everyone. Some people are
No, it's
just
not for everyone.
they rather have a job, or they rather
Yeah, exactly.
or
And you shouldn't have to be an entrepreneur though to be a minority person who has an opportunity. There should
yeah.
be an opportunity for you that exists within the realm of working for a company, and that's basically what I'm trying to bridge.
That's one thing. Another thing you shouldn't need. One thing I have seen is that like you don't need to be like a Michael Jordan or a super
Mm,
performer person to actually
exactly.
be accepted.
Hmm.
Because I see that
Exactly.
we a lot of black people that it's like superstars are very
Hmm.
glamorized, no, all over the world.
Exactly.
And there is so many other who just normal people, regular
Normal
people.
people deserve a shot too. Exactly. And
Yeah, that's
that's
what I'm
actually what I
saying.
run into a lot. I run into that a lot with people with me because they're like, well, you're black and you're so successful. Like, you have a PhD at this young age and you have your business and you're making all this money. But it's like, that's not really a fair comparison because I'm essentially an anomaly in a lot of ways, And I don't, I should, you, black person or a person of color shouldn't have to be all of this. They shouldn't have all these degrees. They shouldn't have to be so exceptional for you to be respected and have an opportunity, like it should be just good enough that they meet the qualifications. But a lot of times it's like they only pick a few of us, like poster children, like you said, like Michael Jordans and stuff like that, and say you guys are like rock stars and stuff like that. So you represent everyone, and that's not really a fair
Yeah,
comparison.
because that's like that's not most people,
No, it's not.
just but here's the thing: like most people can actually do something, whereas
Hmm.
that working on a particular area of business or doing whatever plumbing or engineering, whatever they're good at,
Yeah.
you don't need to be a superstar to
No.
actually do it, get it
Exactly.
done.
To get an opportunity.
Now,
Exactly.
you said something about you, about your past, about your background, about your journey. Do you feel
Hmm.
like you want to get a little bit into like what your journey was, like starting
Sure.
from when you was younger, when you was a child, what you went
Sure.
through, some of the experiences
Sure.
up until you graduate? Like really your personal journey in
Hmm.
and like really whatever you want to get into. Some things you
Hmm.
may not feel like getting into, like just go on, just because I'm just curious to.
Sure. So like I mentioned before, I was diagnosed with autism pretty early on in life. So for me, I was nonverbal, so I didn't speak at all, even though I'm not clearly I can speak, until I was around 4 or 5 years old. So they already knew all then that okay, autistic clearly because it was very obvious for me. Not everyone's that obvious. But then I also was diagnosed with savantism because at the age of 5, I was able to play
I think I just
just more of a, I guess, natural gift. So
I just lost you for a little bit. Like you said, at the age 5, you were able to.
oh, sorry about that. I was able to play piano, classical piano, pretty much perfectly. Like the composer that I played a lot was Debussy.
All right. Wait just a
So
minute. I think I'm losing you.
yeah,
Wait a
I
minute.
was already different.
So you are you there, man?
Can you hear me?
Like,
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
yeah. So you're talking about piano. You could play perfect piano. So
Yes,
that
yes. That
is
was
that
age
a
of 5.
is that a characteristic of someone who's autistic, like having some other type
S-
of skill?
yeah, savantism, savantism. It's some people. So basically, it's not people with autism can also be savants. So I'm an autistic savant. So it's a little bit different
Wow.
from being, yeah. So essentially, so yeah, so with that, it did I realized as I got older I could play a lot of instruments. So I could basically play all string instruments, just have a natural ability to pick it up and learn them very quickly and by self teach. But also with that though, I also have a learning disability to where it can be very challenging for me to learn in traditional ways. So I wasn't able to sit in a classroom and learn because I told you the noises and the social interactions, the questions, the conversations. So I was also taken out of classrooms and I had to like learn by myself a lot. Like I had to be in like a special education program. So even though technically speaking, I could play all these instruments and technically I was really intelligent, I skipped grades. I was still put in a special education program because how I learned was so different from everyone else. Um,
And
so I
like
ended up
you born in like in the 90s. I don't know when all of this science came out. Like I don't know as how developed was the science. How you
yeah,
like it's I don't know what happened like in the last 20 years, but
sure.
it wasn't so developed back in the day.
No,
There
exactly. They
wasn't
kind of
so
just they
much
yeah
science
they literally just
around.
stuck me different. They just stuck me away from everybody else. That was it. I didn't have a customized program. They were just like, well, we don't know what to do with you, so we're gonna take you out because I would have like fits and like be very aggressive and like I would would not be able to sit and just focus. So they just took me into a different classroom, like special education. That was it. They kind of just gave my homework from there, and so I had no interaction with other kids. Which definitely did not help with the social settings and getting adjusted to that because I didn't have an opportunity to do it. And they skipped me grades, so they would just have me take a test and go, okay, you can skip this grade. So I ended up graduating high school at 15 because of that. They're just like, you're smart enough, skip a grade, stay out of classrooms, just kind of do your own thing. So I graduated at 15, but I really didn't know what I was doing in my life because like, at the time I also like a lot of challenges at home. So my mother, I didn't know at the time, but I do now, was schizophrenic. So she was a nurse when I was very, very young. However, when I got older, she was getting worse and worse. Essentially, she believed that she was like a prophet of God, and that that she was going to be sending messages, and basically things like that, where she wasn't able to work or even raise us, and she would disappear for long periods of time, so much so that we end up, like me and my siblings, we were homeless for a long time, and we had to kind of take care of ourselves, because she clearly could not take care of us. She was unstable. So during the
So
same time while I'm trying to
you are the oldest brother, or
no, actually, I'm almost the youngest. I have an older sister and an older brother, and then me, and then a little sister.
so when all that was going on, who was in charge, like taking care of the?
Um, I suppose I feel like none of us were necessarily in charge. It's crazy, none of us were really in charge. I feel like I was always a voice of reasoning because I'm not I don't respond emotionally to things. I'm very objective and I'm strategic. I plan everything. So whenever something would go on, they would have to like walk me through the emotional implications of it, like, oh look, by doing this we're sad, and we don't like that mom's not here. I'm like, okay, well, we need to eat food, so we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this. And that's kind of how I worked very early on, because I'm like, well, we need money, so I'm gonna work. That's how I always looked at things. And I understand now as an adult that those emotional, challenges that they were facing is the reason why, though, they do a lot of trauma now. Like as adults, they do a lot of trauma that I don't necessarily connect with, because, I don't necessarily understand at that level what we were going through. I looked at it as I had a plan. I'm like, I'm gonna work. I'm gonna go to this prestigious school because, like, for my grades, the magnet school, the technology school, that I knew that Ivy Leagues went, always scouted for. I got to the school, I worked, I got enough money to earn the class, and I'm like, I'm just gonna do this so I can get where I want to go and reach my goals. But say my family and my brothers and sisters, they were having to deal with the trauma involved with like abuse and homelessness and stuff like that. And even as an adult, they never worked through it, so it impacted them, a lot harder than it did me. So no one was necessarily in charge. It was more so that they were working through it a lot differently than say I was, because I was kind of like strategic.
Okay, okay, so they were far more emotional, and you think at the end it impacted them far more.
Yes,
And
of course, yeah.
so you said you were homeless actually at the point, and in what city,
Yes,
what part of America was that? And
that was in
how,
Alabama, Montgomery, Alabama, like in the country, like a very rural area of Alabama.
all right, and how you navigate that? How you get food, man? What you?
Sure, yeah. So the first thing that we did was, I found a job that, it was part of like a charity group, but essentially me and I got my brother to do it too, so we could double the income. We were handing out flyers. So basically this company was like, okay, look, just hand out flyers. Your guys are fast, just need to walk in these neighborhoods and just hand out a bunch of them. Put these like little ads up. So we were doing that. Even the non-soliciting neighborhoods were like, we don't care. We just need to get this done. So we were paid, like $20 an hour to just do that. So we would do that, after school, on the weekends, like all day long to, scrounge up enough money to like then pay for food for our sisters. And when I got a little bit older, I was able to work as like I work in the stock area, like a store. And I worked at a craft store. And I'm like, started, lifting up stuff and kind of putting shelving and stuff like that. And I did that all through high school, because high school I went to, it was a public school, it was a magnet school, and the courses stuff were kind of expensive to pay for the supplies and everything. So, but I wanted to go because I knew that a lot of good schools recruited from it, because it's a like number 2 school in the state. So I'm like, I had to go to school, and I really want to get an opportunity to go to, to get scholarships and stuff. So I worked, and again paid for a hotel or a motel for my siblings, and my brother and me, we split the costs and stuff. That's how we took care of each other.
Wow, 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 wow. So at the end, you ended up graduating. Which university? I think it was well. I don't remember what university you went to, but one
Oh,
good
St.
one.
Leo for my bachelor's degree. But that was actually after I joined the military. Like, so there was a gap. I joined them. I went straight into college right after that to Auburn University. It's a college in Alabama, Auburn University. I left though and went to the military because I just didn't know. I was too young. I didn't really want to stick with college. And while I was in the military, I went back to college and went to St. Leo University. And that's when I graduated my first degree.
Wow, wow. What you do for the military? What was your?
Um, Sure. So it's called a CTR. I worked in Intel, but the equivalent as far as civilian is a business analyst. So
Okay.
business analyst is a person, who like basically is a liaison between like different teams. So you're the person who like has to understand and know the language of all these different teams, like marketing, and then business owners, and then development teams or engineering teams or IT, and you have to like piece together what everyone does and how to communicate with everyone effectively.
So now, well, yeah, this was a quite powerful and longer conversation. As we
Mhm.
get toward the end, I want to ask you, for someone who's approaching behavioral psychology, behavioral science, who maybe it's curious to learn about the mind and all of this, what you're doing, do you have like one book to recommend that anyone can read? Just a
Um,
good book,
hmm,
like that's mainstream, like that really anyone can go
sure.
through.
Sure. I don't know of any books specifically, only because I'm actually not really an avid reader. Surprise most people, but I don't actually. But I would say a resource that you could use to better understand it would be YouTube and like TED Talks. You know, you're really there's a lot of professionals out there who have content that helps you better understand very specific aspects of the field. And so you have a topic you want to learn more about, just pull it up on YouTube or TED Talks, and they can
Yeah,
explain it to
just
you very
actually
clearly.
just be curious about. Now
Hmm.
I'm gonna actually end up the this one by suggesting one book I just got. I don't know how it
Hmm.
is, but
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see it. That's actually this
Okay. Yeah.
one. The way I
Oh
see
yeah.
it from Albert Einstein. I just got
Okay.
it.
Cool.
So it's a pretty short book. I don't know I don't know what the experience of this book will be. I have no
Okay.
idea. I just got it. It's nice and short. It was written by Albert Einstein. The world as I see it. Okay. It just comes at
Hmm.
$5-6, so anyone can get it on Amazon. And
Okay.
I think it's good. I mean, like Einstein, it's a pretty smart guy. So
Yeah.
I'm
Sure.
pretty smart guy. I'm
Yeah.
curious to see what he says. And so if you guys wanna read it, please buy it. And that was my interview with my man Diem. Thanks for being here, man, and thanks
Yeah.
for the
No problem.
conversation.
Of course. You have a great day.
Bye.